All right, everybody, welcome back to the After Hour Show with Jeremy Roberts from HiringSolved. All right, fact, sourcing has never been easier than it has in the history of recruiting. We have access to more information than we know what to do with. And sincerely, I believe that companies do not have sourcing issues. The overwhelming majority of jobs really mostly have engagement issues, not sourcing issues. That's my belief. They have an engagement issue, and recruiters are given a list of passive candidates, and they have no idea what to do with them, and how to, burn through those candidates and get the highest amount of yield out of it. If they do anything with them, they're going to email them, they're going to look them up on social media one by one and send them a crappy message that's not very engaging, and asking them if they're interested, or, hey, can you send me some referrals? So they're confusing their call to action. So why is it so hard for organizations to define specific processes for recruiters to effectively engage candidates, especially passive candidates?
That was such a long intro. I'm confused.
So the premise is that recruiters are not very good at engaging candidates, and why is it so hard for organizations to define or clearly define a process to engage passive candidates from the recruiter's perspective?
I think because everything I said in the previous show, their process is so broken that they don't have time to actually get good at it. I think they're expecting people to engage passive candidates, but they don't have time to get good at it.
There's obviously ways you can clearly define this. Okay, when you approach a passive candidate, here's what you say, right? You don't have to give them a verbatim script, or maybe you do, but I think there's ways that you can handle that. And then once you have that conversation with them, if they're qualified, you do this. If they're not interested, you do this. I don't think that is very clearly defined in most recruiting processes. Do you?
No, and I think they can't get a candidate on the phone to even clearly define it. I just think
however you're engaging with them, right?
Yeah, most organizations, they want passive candidates, but they haven't cleared the way for the recruiters to have time or skill set to do it.
Right. So that defaults them, since they need a candidate, doesn't matter what kind of candidate. That means you have to go to the lowest hanging fruit all the time.
Yes.
For a majority of your requisitions. And there's lots of debate, and is there passive candidate versus active candidate, higher quality, lower quality? It's irrelevant to this conversation. I'm just trying to say that the engagement process is fairly broken across most organizations, and I'm wondering why that can't just be standardized within an organization. When you talk to a candidate, do this, this, and this. Whether they're active, passive, doesn't matter.
Yeah, well, I'd say it is, like you mentioned, staffing firms, like good staffing firms, they do have that nailed down, because that's their bread and butter.
Right.
It doesn't matter where you get the candidate. This is the process you take them through. And I think when you think about recruiters who are constantly processing applicants, they're accustomed to screening applicants, not interviewing them. They're accustomed to screening and passing them through to the next step, not interviewing and finding motivation and matching that motivation with the job and convincing the candidate to do it. Do you know what I'm saying? So they're spending
totally different skill sets, right?
Spending 90% of their time processing applicants and then treating passives like applicants.
Right.
And it doesn't mix. It's totally different.
And I think that's where most companies make the mistake, is they don't have a clearly defined process to begin with. But when they do create a process, they don't have a process for active candidates versus passive candidates. They should be going through two different funnels, in my opinion. Two different processes, lower barrier to entries for passive candidates. You still need to collect the resume and get them to do this. But I think you can do that a little bit later on in the process, when they are actually interested in your job, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So, all right, let's revisit some of the nopes and the ups. The first one was, most underutilized resource of candidate resumes is the company's own resume database. And you said yup on that one.
Oh, it's insane. I mean, we have a feature now where you can search your own database and then you can see the delta. Okay, so how many candidates do we have? And it's all verbal. You can walk through it, and how many candidates do we have with these skill sets in this market, and then how does this compare with the workforce?
Right.
Is the question you would ask our conversational interface. And so it'll say you have 238 candidates in this market. It looks like there are 530 with these skills in that market. So half of our customers have 40% of the total addressable market already in their database. And so if you've already got that, there really is no, I mean, unless you just really suck at closing, there's really no reason to go external, when you've got that much of the market already there.
And understand there's always outliers, right?
Yeah,
Somebody's
yeah.
gonna be, oh, I'm working on some, photovoltaic, blah, 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 whatever. And yeah, there's probably 50 engineers in the entire US that do that. And if you got 20,
No, or you're opening a new plant,
right,
in
exactly.
in a location you haven't recruited in, right? They're always outliers, but for a large organization recruiting specific skill sets for more than 5 years, and you've been, everybody you've seen on a job board or professional network, you've stuck in a CRM.
Yep.
After a few years, you shouldn't have to go outside very often. So,
right.
I mean, I've heard some of our, we've done some studies. One of our clients actually, like if you go to if you look, they found that they have 60% of the addressable market, when they look at a candidate, that they have 60% already in their database. That's huge.
Yeah.
You shouldn't be buying more information if you've got 60% of the addressable market. You should be learning how to engage and close those people.
Absolutely. And I just recorded a episode last week, which gets released this week, where for their 2020 budgets, I recommended that they should be doing two things: is A, funneling money away from driving traffic and towards engagement technologies. And then the second thing is they should be investing heavily in their employer branding. And I'm not talking about pushing it off to some marketing person in the marketing department that's working on a consumer brand. I want somebody that's working on an employer brand and how they bring that to life within their talent acquisition organization. So those were the two recommendations I made, but you'll have to read or watch the rest of the episode to get the rest of it. So.
Yeah. Very cool.
All right, next one was GDPR. Have you seen any data around GDPR and its effectiveness? And I mean, I've got lots of friends over in Europe. Most of them are not particularly happy about it. They weren't really concerned about it by and large, but they see that it's a huge hindrance every time they go to apply to a job, or their personal information is being exchanged, right? So what are the true benefits, and how are we measuring this? Do you know? I don't know if you're a GDPR.
I have no idea. I mean, I've been involved in all of the work and conversations to make sure our tool is GDPR compliant. So I understand from our perspective what we have to do, and I understand the rights of an individual. And I can't say that I disagree with the rights of an individual, but I don't know.
But in a society where we are so free to give up those rights to our personal information, is it really making a difference? I don't know.
I don't think so. I think it's, I don't think anybody has tracked it yet, because you haven't even really heard any huge lawsuits yet, right? I mean, like there's not, especially in our space, I mean, there's not a victim yet. So I think it's, it's kind of like the beginning of the OFCCP fears. It's like right now we're trying to document, but we haven't seen how strictly it's going to be upheld. So practitioners are trying to understand the legal requirements and take a stance that's defensible in court and do the right thing.
Right.
I don't know that there's a great example yet of someone who's been prosecuted. But I think we're all trying to just make sure that we feel good about our stance and that we are, taking proper precautions. I mean, it's interesting as a individual and a dad of 3. I mean, it's a little nerve-wracking what people can have access to about
Yeah.
you now. So yeah, I understand the sentiment behind it. I don't know that it's the best version that it could be.
Yeah, totally agree. I don't know whether it's the tool that's actually going to fix the problem.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't seen any data or reports that shows the effectiveness of GDPR or even of CCP, for that matter. I think it's just another compliance layer right now, which
Yeah.
companies have to comply with.
So
And
I look at it as it's the current reality,
yeah,
CCPA, like that's why people selling data, it's interesting. It's going back to an opt-in world. Job boards were killing it for a while, and then there were other options. And now with GDPR and CCPA, it's an opt-in world again if people haven't given you
yeah.
permission. So could it be the resurgence of the job board?
Well,
I
that's
don't
the
know.
thing with GDPR. Even if they have given you permission, you have to constantly ask them for more permission and more
Yeah.
permission, more
Yeah, you
permission.
have to check back in. You have
Yeah.
to check back in with them. Yeah.
And
So
the time frames are different for every country. Some are 6 months, some are a month, some are a couple weeks, which is ridiculous. So it's like all you did was increase the amount of spam that they received, right? Or communications that will be deemed spam, right? All right. So the phone is still the best way for recruiters to reach out to candidates.
when I say phone, I said yes because text messaging is
There you go.
done with the phone, right? So, so yeah, I think when you include text messaging, that's probably accurate, and I think you need to eventually get them on the phone.
Yep.
If you want to be able to influence them later in the process, there has to be that personal
Your phone
connection.
can also be used for video. It can be used for chat.
Yeah.
Browsing the web.
Well,
you can now actually
I'm going to stick to texting and conversations, though, are still going to be important. If you want to influence someone, you've got to get closer to them. If you just want to process applicants, all of the other can apply. But if you want to influence a senior level person, you're going to have to talk to them eventually.
Well, I would say that if you need to influence anybody in taking a job where they already have a job, whether it's senior or not, that's best done over the phone or through a video chat, something like that, or in person.
Yeah.
So there's plenty of data in a resume and a job description so that AI should be able to give you 100% match. This was a softball, right?
Yeah, no way. No way. No,
It's
and
not there yet.
no, not at all. It'll never be there. I mean, there's got to always be human intervention and training.
Yep. So what kind of additional data sources can AI tap into to give more information either about the company or the job or the candidate? Because obviously the resume and the job description are not enough. It needs some other type of data source. What other kind of data source do you think are out there that they could tap into?
Well, I mean, to really make a good match, you gotta tap into the actual freaking person. You know what I'm saying? Like, if you look at my LinkedIn profile, it tells you nothing about what I actually do. It tells you my title and where I work. Right. So my title might imply what I do, but it's not written anywhere. So you would have to have a conversation with me that's been transcribed or, I don't know. I don't know what other, the human intervention, the human involvement in the process is going to be key. Training the AI.
It's going to be interesting. I mean, as more and more of our conversations are being documented, whether that is documentation through transcription or through video, whatever, the TikTok generation, their entire lives are being documented, right? Whether a lot of them don't even care, they just do it. So I think that's going to play in some big form in the next 5 years or so.
Yeah, for sure.
There's going to be a lot of video AI coming out in the next 5 years is my guess. New recruiters today are missing a specific critical skill set. What would you say that is? You said yes to this.
The soft skills, I think. I don't mean the ability to connect at a really deep level and understand the motivations of the hiring manager and the candidate, and being able to put deals together. I'm not saying that they're not capable of that. I'm saying they're too process driven right now, not getting deep enough into the soft skills.
Yeah, well, the biggest thing I'm seeing is when I got laid off from Monster, I put my resume out there, had a bunch of interviews, and almost every recruiter I spoke to had less than a year experience. It was probably 10 or 15 of them. So that's the pool that I'm working with here, 10 or 15. So hopefully I'm not making too broad of an assessment here, but none of them were interested in developing a relationship. They just wanted 3 to 5 questions answered. Did I meet the minimum skills? Pass me over to the hiring manager. That was it.
Wow.
And that was very telling about how recruiting has been so process driven and so tactical driven, as opposed to forming a relationship with the person on the other side of the phone.
Yeah, well, and especially somebody at your stage of your career. I mean, you can't get it all on a resume.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like understanding, like what that
resume.
tells me is those people probably don't really understand the job. They don't really understand the hiring manager, or they would have been asking you questions that would help them tell that story to the hiring manager. You know, so they're pushing people to the hiring manager who passed the qualifications, letting the hiring manager run the whole process.
Yep. And ironically,
to me,
some were from RPO, some were from staffing firms, and some were from corporate. So a little bit of everything.
Well, and hiring managers love that if you suck.
Yep. Jeremy, I know you've got a time crunch here, so I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much for being on
Thank you very much.
After Hours and Speaker Agenda. Make it a great one, everybody. Bye-bye.
See ya.
Take care. All right, man.